It's not about the equipment. It is not about the equipment. I think the most important thing to remember is that it's your mindset that has to change, the way you look at this whole system, that everything's interconnected. The equipment is a small piece. If you don't change the way you think, the equipment really doesn't benefit you that much. In other words, it's a mindset. It's understanding how everything is holistically tied together. The very, very critical thing for a lot of landowners, what they forget is that it took years and years in a system that's been disrupted. The soil has been disrupted. Now you have to fix it, and you have to repair it. But if you learn how it works and how the soil functions, then you start realizing that the equipment is an important part, but the most important critical thing is your thinking process. And then the tools are not the focus, but the understanding is the focus, and the tools are to carry out your understanding. So to me, the most important thing about it is understanding how your soil system functions. That's number one. And then the tools come into place. So people say, well, what tools do I need for this? Well, so like I said, understanding, then you can bring in the no-till drill. It's probably one of the most critical. And the reason I like the no-till drill is because it doesn't impact the soil system. It again, limiting disturbance. And then you got your sprayer. But those are the very few pieces of equipment that a landowner uses. But the most critical one is on mine. It's not easy. In this type of system, you have to think more. You have to evaluate. You have to look at your system a little more intensely. I never forgot, I was talking to a landowner and says, what could help you let me back up. He told me, I asked him, I said, how can we get more people to do no-till? And he said to me, Ray, what I need is a mentor, somebody to encourage me, to help me, because the first 3 to 5 years are the most difficult times. Because what you're doing is your soil system's going back, you're taking a soil system that's been disrupted for the last 100 years, and you're trying to further it to the healing process. And it takes time. And those first 3 to 5 years are the most difficult for this whole process. In fact, you'll probably have to use more fertilizer, you'll probably have to use more herbicides those first 3 to 5 years. And until finally the soil reaches a steady state or an equilibrium point where it actually starts healing more, the infiltration process starts coming back. And so in my experience, the first thing that comes back is the soil structure and the infiltration. And the most difficult one to get back is the nutrient cycling. And that one takes feeding the soil system, feeding it with diversity. Diversity, diversity, diversity. So that's very critical. So it's not a bed of roses. The first 3 to 5 years, it's very difficult, but you need somebody to talk to bounce ideas and to mentor. Because the farmer told me, he says, the neighbors thought I was crazy. They just said I was crazy and I had no one to talk to. So mentorship and knowing somebody that knows what they're doing is really a helpful thing. The worst thing you could do in starting off is plant something that's very difficult, like corn. Believe it or not, corn is one of the hardest things to plant on a no-till system. Let me explain. And farmers are the ones that help me and teach me the most about these things. I have a farmer in North Dakota that what he does, he plants his field in alfalfa. So he plants it in a legume where the soil starts healing for 3 to 5 years. So if you start the healing process by growing a perennial, which is a fantastic way to get the soil to start healing, then going no-till corn. Or another way is if you plant a sod or a grass. Sod or grasses are fantastic for building soil health because all the root system and all the exudates to feed the biology, leave it there for 3 to 4 or 5 years, and then start your no-till system. Have the biology help you be successful. Now, some farmers have sold all their equipment and they said, I'm going to do all of it. And we had a farmer in North Dakota who completely got hailed out 3 times consecutively. He sold all his equipment and went straight to no-till because he was that committed. But you're right. Most times we tell farmers, start small parts of your field. Start with 10 acres, start with 20 acres. But start doing something to start that natural process, of that healing process. Limit your tillage. That's a good start. Just by limiting tillage will help the soil system. Anything that will limit the disruption of the soil system is a benefit in the right way, or even covering it, or putting a cover crop at the end. You're doing something positive. But me personally, if I was farming, I would go straight to a no-till system, because I know if I just don't disrupt the soil habitat, I can get the soil system to start working for me. What I've noticed in the coastal plains, and I've been down there, is that a lot of our sandy soils, most people have to realize a lot of the way they're held together is biologically driven. So, because they are inert, sand is inert anyway, the more biology you can get into that system, the better you're off. So that's why I've seen the rotations in these systems that are in, they're not very good. They do not put enough carbon back into the system. We have a farmer that is farming the coastal plains, and he's been an excellent no-till. And you can see his sandy soils have a layer of dark organic matter on the top of the surface. And he's been no-tilling for years on sandy soils. So that's not always the case. We hear a lot about, well, we have compaction issues. Why not use nature to break up that compaction? Use bio-drilling. Steve Groff in Pennsylvania uses radishes and using these rye with these huge fibrous root systems to get into those hard pans. Our first default switch we usually do is we usually go into the tillage. That's our safest thing that we feel comfortable. Let's bring out the eraser and start over again. And that's how people address these compaction issues on these sands. I think you can use nature to help you deal with those compaction issues. You don't get from this point to this point overnight. You can't do it that way. You have to be patient with the system. And that's one thing that a lot of farmers have problems with, being patient. It's easy to say to be patient. Like you said, I get my check every 2 weeks. But the reality is, again, you have to come to this. Does nature disrupt itself? It doesn't do that. And if you can learn the principles, I call them the keys to the soil health, is limit disturbance, cover the soil all the time with diversity, 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 have a live root growing all the time. That's what nature does. You can start beginning these healing processes in the soil. And then you'll have less and less problems with these compaction issues. So I think a good portion of these problems are we created them ourselves, and we tend to get on these soil surfaces when they're still very wet. So again, mimic what nature does and learn from it, and we can help limit some of these problems that we have.